I would advise first is to start creating connections on social media platforms. So this could be on Instagram DMs. This could be through Facebook. Clubhouse is a wonderful application
Oh, wow.
to get in touch with producers or even co-hosts and start pitching yourself. But also word of mouth. If you have a friend within your circle who's appeared on a television show and they have a similar sort of niche, ask them if they'd be willing to share their contact. It's a 50-50 if they will or they won't. But all of this is doable without an agent. And I think for a long time we thought, okay, we need someone to do this outreach for us. You truly don't, because once you're in the circle, once you've started incorporating one or two shows, they will recommend you to other people, or brands will find you through those shows.
Hello. This is your host, Dyutama, and welcome to My Food Lens podcast, where we talk about everything from food photography, styling, to business and mindset. After 15 years as an architect, I switched careers and I'm now a professional food stylist and food photographer based in Singapore. I'm also the founder of the business My Food Lens, where we help clients elevate their brand through drool-worthy photos. My motto is, put your best food forward. Well, here on this podcast, I promise to keep it raw and real and hope you find your answers, action, and inspiration as we move through the episodes. Hi guys, today we are talking to Jessie Sierra Ross. Now, Jessie is incredible. Jessie is a rock star. Jessie is a TV personality. Jessie is a food and lifestyle blogger. She's a recipe developer and she's also a cocktail specialist. Now that's something special. And I'm so looking forward to my conversation with her because you know what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about being on TV. We're going to talk about bringing food photography, food styling to TV and how that translates to the big screen. So you're passionate about food and food styling and cooking. Then how do you show up on TV? How do you present it on TV? Who do you approach? Who do you talk to? How do you script your recipes? How do you select your recipes? How do you choose your products? What's the gear that you use? Do you tune in or do you go on the set? Do you have a co-host? Do you have a chef to work with? Do you have an oven? Do you bake a turkey? Do you make a cocktail? Jessie answers all of that for us. So aren't you excited for this episode? Because I sure am. All right, with that, on to Jessie. Hi, Jessie, and welcome to My Food Lens podcast. I'm so excited to have you. And that's because we have never had a TV personality on our podcast before. So thank you very much for making us look so glamorous, so fancy. I'm also so excited because usually on a Sunday night, I'm pretty grumpy. I'm like dreading Mondays, but I'm so looking forward to our conversation. You just made Sunday night so exciting. I'm looking forward to talking all about TV, all about content creation, all about recipe creation, everything about the big screen. And you're such a master at it. So no one better than you to tell us all about it. But before we move forward, could you please introduce yourself to our audience, your name, business, location, and all the good stuff?
Oh my goodness, with an introduction like that, I feel like we are at a cocktail party. I'm going to pull up my wine. Such a pleasure to be here. Yes, so my name is Jessie Sierra Ross, and I am the blogger and food stylist behind Straight to the Hips Baby, where I focus on light and bright photography with lush floral aspects, and I just love a good recipe and stiff cocktail. I'm located in Boston, Massachusetts in the US.
Amazing. I'm totally with you on the stiff cocktail. Wouldn't be bad to have one right now. But I know something very interesting about you, and that is that you were a ballerina. Not many people might know this who are listening. So tell us a little bit about from a ballerina to food videos to TV, like what got you here?
It's such a funny question because it's a funny story. You think of a ballerina and the lifestyle is very strict. It's creative and fun, but it doesn't involve a ton of food and cocktails. But, I like to say I'm making up for lost time. So I was a professional ballerina for 20 years. And I had such an amazing life during that time. I performed with an international group of extremely talented dancers and then all over New England. And it was definitely a lifestyle that I really engaged with. It really informed my perspective as it went on into food photography and styling. That light, bright elegance, and I always say that easy elegance is truly from my time in theater. But as I came down to the end of my career and started to transition into a family life, I realized I had a passion for food and the detail that I brought to my career as a dancer, where, even how you hold your hands or the tilt of your head so that the stage lights can kiss that cheek just perfectly or the leg swings up effortlessly. I needed to bring to my food and my food photography. So it's been a really interesting transition. And I think that you can see in my work, if you go to my site or my social media accounts, you can see that theatrical side of me in my photographs. The tutus might be missing and I may have replaced it with an apron, but it is still very much there.
Yeah, and the florals, the grace, the kind of that feminine touch, I can definitely see it. Oh my God, I can so relate to it right now. But Jessie, one thing that before we move forward, I think I just have to tell our audience that you're not just a TV personality. You're quite a food blog school pro hero. You have this fantastic channel on Food Blog School where you talk so much about food styling, photography, blogging, podcasting, and that's how we connected. But there's so much more. Like, it's not just TV. I know that we're going to focus on that in this episode, but if someone really wants to get into everything related to food photography, they should definitely tune into your Food Blog School. So I just wanted to leave this in here before we proceed further. Sorry, I missed that in the beginning. But perfect. So I totally see your style. I see it in your photos and I relate it definitely to your personality. So how did you get into TV? What was your first gig? Tell us that.
It's really quite funny. So being in theater, I'm a pretty natural razzle-dazzle performer. I really enjoy the spontaneity of live television. It's very much like live theater. If you're doing a ballet, you're out on stage, and once you're out there, that's it. You have control. And my first TV gig was actually accidental. It was through meeting a local TV anchor through friends, and we were discussing our love of food and cocktails. And she said, "Hey, would you like to be on our program?" And my first instinct was to kind of shake and wonder, because dance is a silent art. We don't speak. So to think about speaking on camera was a little bit intimidating, but I really embraced the idea of the phrase, why not? And why not say yes to more opportunities? So I kind of gave myself a kick in the pants and said yes. And so I first appeared on a local morning chat show. And I have to tell you, I didn't really know what I was doing. I practiced for days before because I only had 3 minutes to present a full recipe, which is quite difficult. And once I was on set and I met the co-host and the lights turned on, it felt like I was slipping back into my old pointe shoes. It was really, truly a performance aspect that I enjoyed. So from there, it kind of built on itself. I started to connect with other TV producers in New England and seek out opportunities. And it's become such a huge facet of my business, but also my content creation. It's interlocked now. So sometimes I will have recipes already made that I may show on TV, but other times I will get business bids to create recipes for TV content that then appear as sponsored content on my posts. So it's very fluid and it is so fun.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. It's just by chance you were there, but then you were in your element as well. You were used to an audience. You were used to being in the spotlight.
Right. Yeah, for better or for worse.
Amazing. So, yeah, I guess that comfort kind of comes for somebody who's never ever been exposed to a big audience or being in front of a live audience. It can be a bit intimidating. That's interesting. So, tell me a little bit. I know you just mentioned that, but tell me just a little bit more on everything that you do for TV. So, you said recipe creation and then also some videos. So, tell us, just get into a little more detail for us there.
Oh, absolutely. So there's several ways that we can create content for TV work. One of the most popular ones that I do is I will be hired to come in to present a recipe of mine, which also includes the still photography that I do as well. But there's more aspects than just coming in with your ingredients
Right.
and showing up with some photographs. You have to really choose wisely with the recipes that you are going to prepare, knowing that you typically only have between 2.5 minutes and 6 minutes
Gosh.
tops to create a fully fledged dish while making small talk with a host where you don't really know what they're going to say. And then, you might burn your oil in the middle of it. So you have
Right.
to be ready with the correct recipe. So that means really diving in deep, pre-preparing whatever you can ahead of time. So if I were to make a cake, I would always have a cake finished for that magic of TV moment where you bring it out and you say, "This is my delicious cake,"
Oh,
even if the recipe on camera was just a disaster, because what the audience will remember is that delicious
the
cake.
finished
So
one.
I
Yep.
will, exactly, your finished hero shot right there. And so when I come to the studio, I come with my equipment, I come with my ingredients. I have pieces of the recipe already done. I will have everything pre-portioned so that I don't have to take up a lot of time.
Mm,
And I will always set the stage as well. I will set the studio. Occasionally, you will have producers, assistant production assistants who will cook your food ahead of time in style. But more
okay.
often than not, the budgets are quite small. So you are the food stylist. So you are bringing in
Oh, wow.
props as well. So that's one element. Another element is when I have sponsored TV posts, which
Hmm.
are wonderful. I really enjoy doing that for brands. So they will give me an ingredient, let's say it's a dairy product, and they want to feature that ingredient for a holiday or an upcoming event. And they say, "Hey, Jess, we would like some recipes. We'd like you to create stills. We want to feature it on our site, but we also want you to present it and use your sort of star power, that sort of connection to your local audience to help bolster sales of this product." So then I will go very similar to a sponsored post on social media or on your blog, go through that whole process of discussing the details with the brand, what they would like, and then follow the same routine as before, decide on the recipe, pre-plan, and sort of have everything together as much as possible, set the scene, have your talking points. Occasionally you'll have bullet points from the brand that you will also have to sort of mention in regards to the product, and then you just go from there.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God. That's amazing. It's so interesting. Oh, gosh. This is also new and also so interesting because I come from a world of still life photography. I come from a very different kind of a world. So, having 3 minutes to present a recipe is like, it just blows my mind. And the amount of preparation that you need to do, you need to be really efficient. You have to have everything thought out, pre-planned. You know exactly what to do when, what to say when. Oh goodness, it's another level of planning, I'd say. Wow. So Jessie, tell me, who are your clients? Like, you said food brands definitely engage you, but do TV shows engage you directly as well? Because you said you reach out to some producers. So who would you say are the clients in the TV world?
So in the TV world, it's an excellent question. When you start in this business, it's like any other field. You're starting at the bottom, you're gaining experience.
Mm-hmm.
Also, realizing, connecting with different people, different producers, and it kind of builds on each other. So I tend to work with channels, mainly morning TV channels, but also national channels. And
Right.
I've been fortunate enough to have appearances on several talk shows, but also with streaming platforms as well. And a lot of this video that is either created independently in my home, say if I'm making a pre-package to send out to a TV station, I can then use myself in bits and pieces. So it's great for efficiency. But
Right.
mainly I'm dealing with local networks who are looking to provide food and drink content as well as home entertaining content to their
Hmm.
viewers to help spice up and break up their normal sort of chat show format.
Wow. Okay. And are you usually on the set or do you tune in from home? Because I've seen you doing kind of both. What's more? What's the percentage and how's it currently?
Well, like everyone else with COVID, it kind
Yeah,
of felt like we just threw a bunch of apples in the air and,
I
whatever
know.
lands, lands. But before COVID, I was almost exclusively in studio, which is a wonderful
Wow.
experience. It is very
Yep.
Hollywood.
Yes.
And, with the assistants and the production team running around and the co-hosts, the anchors, everybody that's in that group it's just like live theater. But when COVID hit, an interesting phenomenon started. We were doing Zooms. So we were providing
Hmm.
content via Zoom, which is its own sort of dance because there
Right.
is that lag, that pre-planning. You need to have a proper space and lighting and sound. But it opened up opportunity because whereas I can only show up in person feasibly at this point in the New England
Yeah.
area, all of a sudden I could show up in Texas, or I could beam into San Francisco, or I could even touch upon a more international audience because I had the convenience of having Zoom. So going forward, I have definitely incorporated Zoom as an active feature in my TV content production.
Wow. And that's the way to go. I think COVID has changed everybody's thinking. Suddenly, actually, it's opened up the world for a lot of folks. Like we never
Absolutely.
imagined this was possible. So, is that more of what you're doing now? That's where,
I
where
would
you're at?
I'm slowly getting back in studio, but I am definitely, I would say it's more of a 60-40 at this point, 60% in studio, 40% still on Zoom.
Oh, wow.
I think
Hmm.
that you should still actively seek those Zoom opportunities while you can, just because it is so convenient. And I can produce recipes that I wouldn't necessarily be able to do as easily. Not that you can't, but just as
True.
easily within the studio as I could in my home kitchen where I know where everything is and I can have everything at my fingertips.
Absolutely. Do you ever travel to be on a TV show? Do you?
I
You
do
do.
indeed.
Oh
And
my
it
God.
becomes a weekend and it's fun and I come in with my grocery bags and I am known as the lady with the cart because I will oftentimes bring my own plates or equipment such as a food processor or my nice mixer because for me creating that perfect dish is the highlight and I want to make sure that I'm providing a very high quality product, but also that I'm comfortable, so that when I
Yeah.
get on stage, quote unquote, I'm ready and everything can go as smoothly as possible.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why you don't just need to have a personality in front of the camera. You need to have the good cooking skills and knowledge of your ingredients and processes. So
Oh,
fantastic,
absolutely.
right? So tell us a little bit more about the recipe creation. So one part of it is when a brand approaches you, then obviously they have a product in mind that you're working with. But are there ever opportunities where you have a free hand? Okay, Jesse, come present your recipe, pick your favorite, it's a morning show, whatever. So, how do you select the right recipes? And even if you are given a certain product, how do you pick recipes? Are they based on 3 minute? What can I present in 3 minutes? Or is it just based on, okay, I'm comfortable with this? So, what's your criteria? How do you go about it? Tell us a little bit about that.
It's that's an excellent question, and I want to circle back to what you said about efficiency. A lot of it has to do with efficiency.
Right.
So it's how can I produce this recipe in a way that's efficient with my time as well as the studio time. So if I were given, I'm always given free reign. Geez, the majority of the time. There may
Wow.
be requests in the sense of, hey, we would like to have summer cocktails. Can you show us something from your catalog that's more summery? So there's certain kind of structures like bumpers that I can
Right.
fall into, but a majority of the time I can come in and create what speaks to me, which is really, really fortunate. It's been a lovely experience in that way. Occasionally with products, brand endorsements, things like that, they will have something very specific in mind. So they will come in and say, I would like you to do something for the big game, which is a big football event here in the States. And they will tell me we need it to be an appetizer that is simple enough for a novice cook, but also
Hmm.
refined enough that a more experienced cook would definitely make this for their guests. So that's a great parameter. But for me, when I decide on a recipe, I want to make sure first that it's visually appealing. So I can't get on and necessarily make a beef stew. I wouldn't
Mhm.
necessarily choose that recipe because it's very brown. And
Right.
so when you're dealing with studio lights, it's out of your control. You don't know what the set is like. You don't know what the surfaces are like. So what I try to do is think of color, think of freshness, think of that yum factor, all the facets that we use in still photography, truly. We
Right.
want to think about color theory, texture. We want to think about our lighting situation. So all of that comes into play as I choose a recipe.
Oh,
And
wow.
I will say foods that are seasonal always play very well. So I wouldn't necessarily make, oh goodness, I don't know, a hard lemonade recipe
Yeah.
in the middle of January. I would think,
Yeah.
okay, I need to do a comfort food like a chicken paprikash, which is really soothing and also
Right.
works really well with color theory because it's that orange. I can add some green from garnish. I can serve it on a white plate so it pops. And it's very easy for me to prepare on set.
Right. I would totally do a lemonade in January because I live in Singapore.
Oh, that's right. It's the reverse. Goodness gracious.
Yes.
Well,
And
I
I
need to do
think
more of that.
so for us, seasons are like we're always in the tropics. We're always sipping pina coladas, whether it's
Mhm.
January or whatever. So I think that's a great. I would love to hear the thoughts on this. I feel like TV is a bit different in every country, every
Mhm.
region. So what works in the US might be a little different from India, might be a little different from London, might be a
Yes.
little bit different from Singapore. Of course, the principles and the fundamentals are still the same. But like creating recipes, how do you choose your recipes? It also depends on where it's going to be broadcasted. Who's the audience? Where are they living? So I guess that's an important consideration as well.
It's a tremendous one, and it's one that should be brought up in the conversation before you ever step on set. So I think this is a
Mm,
very important topic for those of us who are just starting out, is to really befriend your producer, ask your questions. And just like you said, the seasonality, where is your audience located? What is their preference? What has been done before? Do they have an idea of what they would like to see? This is all very, very important information because you want to provide the best content you can tailored to the audience at hand. So that conversation should definitely be done, as well as discussing whether or not they have a kitchen. Because sometimes you walk into a studio and it's a
yeah.
desk. So
Oh
you can't
man.
come in and create
Yeah.
something that's been, oven baked when there's no oven.
Oh
So a
gosh.
lot of these
Yeah.
things are questions to do ahead of time. Ask about appliances, ask about kitchens, audiences, time zones, optimum audience members. Absolutely. That's a great point.
Oh gosh. So much to think about. But tell me one thing, like since you brought up producers, I have this question I want to ask you. How do you reach out to producers? How do you know these people? Do you have to be on the page 3 to get in touch with them, or are these people
No.
approachable? How do you know them?
Oh, there's so many ways to go around it, and I know it's incredibly intimidating at first. I am the first one to say that I honestly had no idea. I
Yeah.
would advise first is to start creating connections on social media platforms. So this could be on Instagram DMs. This could be through Facebook. Clubhouse is a wonderful application
Oh wow.
to get in touch with producers or even co-hosts and start pitching yourself. But also word of mouth. If you have a friend within your circle who's appeared on a television show and they have a similar sort of niche, ask them if they'd be willing to share their contact. It's a
Yeah.
50-50 if they will or they won't. But all of this is doable without an agent. And I think for a long time we thought, okay, we need someone to do this outreach for us. You truly don't, because once you're in the
Yeah.
circle, once you've started incorporating one or two shows, they will recommend you to other people, or brands will find you through those shows. So what I would do is create relationships, genuine relationships, because it has to be authentic. And I know we toss that
Right.
word around a lot,
Yeah.
but truly be involved in the program's work, make comments, compliment, start befriending the anchors, the producers. You can also use LinkedIn to research
Hmm.
producers as well. There's a lot of different elements that you can use, and then just go out, reach out, introduce yourself, what you do, where you're located, and suggest, hey, if you ever need any food and beverage content, I am available. Here is my website. Here's my portfolio. Always come from a place of service, of
Right.
helpfulness, because the last thing you want to do is approach either a producer or a co-host and say, you need me. Here's my content. No, that's not going to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Genuine friendships are really how you keep going in this business.
And how long have you been working with the TV producers now? How long has it been?
Oh, goodness. I think it's almost 4 years. Almost
Oh,
4 years
wow.
since I started my first program.
Yeah. Oh,
And
wow.
as mine was a friend of a friend, right? An introduction, a chance introduction, those will
Yes.
happen as well. Start
Hmm.
minding those contacts and say yes.
Yes, of course. Network is everything, and a leap of faith is another.
Huge. Absolutely.
So I'm going to come back to our conversation about recipes and food. And tell me one thing. So, obviously, a lot goes into deciding the right recipe, the right product. You have to make sure that the studio is equipped with whatever you need for that recipe. But this one thing you mentioned. You mentioned that you always have the finished product ready, the finished item ready to show, in the end, okay, this is what it looks like. So, in the
Mhm.
still life world, there are definitely a lot of food styling hacks to make food look good for the camera. Sometimes it's undercooked, sometimes it's made classy, sometimes we put some stuff on it. So tell me, do you do that as well? Like, what food styling elements do you keep in mind when you're creating that final product, which has to be like the money shot, right? So, what do you do? Tell us.
It's really interesting because in a TV studio scenario, sometimes things change or they move very quickly. Your segment may be bumped so that that finished product, if you're creating, a roast, it's going to die on the counter because it's changed. The timing has changed. So yes, food styling hacks. I tend to pride myself on making sure that the food that I create is always edible.
Mm,
So I don't use Elmer's glue to create a shine or fake milk. I will occasionally spray water on produce to make it a little bit fresher or to revive herbs or that citrus cut. What I tend to do is focus really on the planning. Everything is planned to the timing. So when I am getting ready to go into the studio that morning at about 6 a.m., I typically will have a text message with the producer asking them, hey, how is your schedule going? Are we still on time? And
wow.
we'll go from there. Or have them turn the ovens on before I get there so that I can, reheat my salmon en croûte right as I arrive. And so that when I pull it out of the oven, it's juicy and not dried out. For me, timing is everything. As far as
Right.
hacks or styling, I always fall back onto the old color theory or the
Yeah.
creating texture again of creating a scene. In my food photography, I want to introduce the viewer not only to my food, but also the experience of my food.
Mm,
I tend to say to people, I want you to feel that you're coming into my kitchen and into my dining room to sit down and enjoy this
yeah.
recipe of roasted chicken and potatoes or whatever I'm making. And I bring that same ethos to my TV food content. I want that viewer to feel like, as they're looking through the television,
Yeah.
I can not only make this for myself, but I feel like I am sitting at that kitchen counter with the TV host and myself and having that really immersive experience of not only learning how to cook that recipe, looking at that beautiful food that's perfectly styled, but also the sort of warmth, that banter that you have with the co-host too. So it creates that friendly feel. So TV food hacks, plan, plan, plan. If you have a
Yeah.
recipe that you know is delicate, that will die on the counter, that it needs a lot of attention, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Wait till you
Yeah.
do it at home through a Zoom. In
Yeah.
studio, you want to use tried and true recipes that can be stellar, even if they are waiting 5 or 10 minutes.
Right. So you brought up such a good point because we're talking all about difference between still life and the resemblance to kind of still life, like you talk about color theory and all of that. You just touched upon storytelling. So in still life, we create storytelling with ingredients or props, but you have a real chance to create that storytelling in your show. So tell us a little bit about, time is so short, right? Time is like 3 minutes. How much can you really talk? Plus, you're telling the recipe. So how do you bring that storytelling component when you are presenting a recipe?
Such a fabulous question. And I think it depends on the situation. So sometimes I will do a Zoom TV segment, or I'm by myself on set, and then I can chat away. I'm like a
Yeah.
little chickadee. I'm just dip, 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 and I will tell a little bit about the technique. I will add a family story, because typically a lot of my recipes have that family component, because I come from a large family.
Right.
Food is love in my world. And so I will engage, just like if I was at a dinner party, engage my guests, which right now in that moment is the TV cameras. So
Right.
getting comfortable talking to the camera as if it's your best friend or your mother, it's bringing them in. When you're on set, what you said is very true. Not only are you cooking and you're talking and you're making small talk with the co-host, it's a lot. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So going in, what I tend to do is I have a couple of facts that I would like to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a cooking technique, it could be an ingredient technique, but also a couple of personal sort of one sentence sort of liners. The other day I made this beautiful homemade chicken soup, comfort food, right from the soul. It's my mother-in-law's recipe. So I got on stage, we're making our soup, and I say, yes, this soup is amazing. I first learned it as a young newlywed from my mother-in-law, and she's a fantastic cook. I can only hope to be as good as she is, but I like to add my own spin. Like that's how you spin it, is you add a quick something. And again, authenticity. Don't make up your facts. Don't make up your stories. People will know, people will see. You need to be genuine. So come in sort of prepped with bullet points in your mind of cooking techniques, ingredient techniques or facts, and then little bits of story. But, the co-host, it's always important to check in with your co-host as well before the shoot. Some co-hosts just want to stand and watch. Maybe they'll talk a little bit, maybe they won't. Some co-hosts, which are the ones that are really fun to work with, they'll jump right in. So you'll be cooking and they're playing with your sharp knives. You kind of have to oversee. You're like, don't cut your finger off. But check in with your co-host as early as possible, whether that's in the weeks before or even just a moment before the camera rolls. Ask them, how comfortable are you? What would you like to discuss? Because some co-hosts are very knowledgeable about cooking, and it can be really fun, and they can kind of throw you. I've been thrown a couple of times by someone who had a lot of experience. Like, well, my goodness, let's do this. Let me learn from you.
Oh, wow.
But storytelling is about personality. And so let your personality shine through as you go and you're cooking on screen.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God. It must be a blast to be on the set. It sounds like fun, stressful, but so fun.
Very much, very much. And you meet so many different people. This Wednesday, I'm going on a set and I'm there on Zoo Day. So I will be feeding parrots.
That's fun.
It's a lot of fun.
So it's definitely fun. One thing that I always wonder is how many takes does it take to get through like one scene, if I can use that term? So, usually it's like, I'm like, how do they know what to say? Why are they not fumbling? Why is it so smooth? And then when you say that you have 3 minutes, like the 3 minutes really stuck in my head. Do you make the script? Does someone else give you the script? And how do you time it to 3 minutes and still keep it spontaneous? And how much wiggle room do you have to kind of slip and fumble?
Some of my most funny stories are with the timing. I would first say is most of the time when I walk into a TV studio, it's live. It's live TV. We're not pre-recorded.
No.
So, right. There are no retakes.
Oh, gosh.
But that was because I've practiced. In the early days, I would usually do a live and then a taped. And sometimes you do get a redo, but time is money. So if you can streamline or get used to fumbling and just going through. And in the world of dance, we always say, if you fall down, get back up. The audience will applaud. And I mean, even in this conversation, I've, stuttered a bit. You keep going. It's okay. You drop your knife. That's okay. One time I forgot to pre-prep an ingredient on set in a live shoot. And it was for like whipped cream. I forgot my cream. And I looked around and I'm in the middle of it. And normally we would serve this with whipped cream, but you could also serve it with a berry coulis. You just kind of tap dance around it, go with the flow, practice at talking to the camera, talking on IG lives, time yourself, get the flow. During a pre-tape, yes, you can ask for a redo, but you maybe will only get one because they have a very strict schedule. If you're
Right.
on live TV, you just keep going and you get the feel also. And always remember, a good co-host will give you indications that you're either a little early and they'll start to stretch it,
Oh,
or they'll give you, well, as we wrap up, Jess, can we see the finished product? They'll give you cues.
ah,
Occasionally you will get a script, but I personally, I can't, I think I've only had that happen once in
wow.
all my television experiences. And I've done 200, 300 of them
Oh,
by now. It's
wow.
always been what I have planned in my mind, or think of it as a conversation. You're having a conversation with
Yeah.
that co-host.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like you do have a lot of opportunity for a pre-production discussion, either with the producer or the co-host. Like
Mhm.
it seems like that is key to really executing well on the D-Day. Is there a proper time
Absolutely.
that's allocated? Do you get several pre-production meetings or do you get one shot, get all your questions, all your discussions? How does it work?
You know, it really depends on the channel. Everyone works a little bit differently. I've had channels who are so prepared. They're touching base with me 2 weeks before, a week before, hours before. Then there are other channels who it's pretty much radio silence.
Yeah.
And I have to reach out. I think what's important is that if you don't feel like that dialogue is being established by the
Hmm.
studio, you create the dialogue because they're used to working with different creators of every level, but also of every
True.
sort of comfort. So there may be creators who would just like to pop in, make their recipe and pop out. Then there's other creators who, for their comfort level, would appreciate that check-in. So
Yeah.
I would definitely say that after the initial pitch and the agreement and you're in discussions for that recipe, start bringing up your questions, start bringing up your concerns, and make sure that they're done in a very polite conversational way, but just in a way so that the producer understands that you are just a professional in this field. And asking these questions is very professional. You are coming in prepared, and they will always appreciate that.
So has it ever happened that someone started, oh, why are they asking? Don't they know their stuff? Like, does anyone think like that if you ask too many questions or if you're over prepared? Does it ever come across like that?
So I'm very type A. And what is normal sort of checklist functioning for me is probably overdoing it for most. I think what
Hmm.
it is ask your most important questions, which for me would be, what type of recipe do you want? Is this pre-taped or is it live?
Yeah.
Will I have a co-host or am I on my own? What's the timing of the segment and what's the kitchen situation? Like those are my main questions. Everything else I can kind of roll in
Right.
and adjust. So I think just identify your key points that you truly need to know before you go in, which I would suggest be that list,
Right.
and then see what happens. Once you start this production, unless it's really difficult or it's been really bumpy, they will ask you back. They will have you because there's so food content creators out there who are willing to not only show up with their delicious food, but act as that personality because a lot of us aren't trained. We're learning on the job. So they'll keep having you coming in and you'll form that relationship and you'll start to see what needs to happen with each studio or each show. So how I work with one station when I go in person is completely different than one that
Yeah.
I do only Zooms with, or another one where it's a much smaller station where they don't have
Right.
a kitchen. You'll learn the dance.
Wow. And so tell us who all are on the set. Is it crowded or is it just a selected few? There's always like, you can be here, you can't be here. Like, who are the people on the set with you?
Oh, so there's the director, there's several producers, assistant producers, there are the cameramen, there's sometimes a lighting technician, there's a sound technician, and sometimes these jobs are combined. There might be one person that takes care of all of it. Sometimes I'm on set where you're sharing the set, so the weatherman might be there and the morning news person might be there. Then you have your morning chat show anchors, guests are coming in and out. You know, it's a lot of energy, but it's very controlled. So
Right.
once something starts taping, you need to be quiet and respectful. And that also means everything stops in the kitchen. You cannot make noise. So if you're prepping, you have to figure out when you can prep so that you are not interrupting another session. But it's fun. It's very loose. You get to meet incredible people. I've met several politicians. I've met
Hmm.
people from different foundations. I've met chefs from acclaimed restaurants in the area
Yeah.
and created this networking
Wow.
event. And you meet someone new every time. And it's about creating those relationships. And one of the best ways, I'll tell you, to foster those relationships is to leave the finished product when you're done, give them lunch. They will love
Ah,
you for it.
yeah.
And clean up after yourself. Do
Oh,
not leave a
wow.
mess. And
Yeah.
I hate to say it, many creators, they leave it for the production assistant, and it's just not nice. Clean up after yourself, because then they'll know that you are a team player and you will get extra gigs.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I think that's even relevant for our still life commercial shoots.
Hmm.
So many photographers, they walk in, they'll shoot, and they'll just leave the space as it is. But yeah, extra points definitely for leaving the space as when you
It's
started.
about respect.
Yeah,
You
of
know.
course. Fantastic. So you have audience that's coming in, going out. You have a full house of crew, and
Hmm.
then you have co-hosts. So
Hmm.
there's pressure from all sides. Oh goodness. So another thing that I just always like wonder about being on TV is like, even if we're going live on Instagram, I'm shaking. It's yeah. People are nervous. We are nervous of showing up on camera, and then to be live in front of so many people. And not just that, that there's a camera and you're being broadcast on a bigger screen to a bigger audience, sometimes nationally. Goodness, it's high pressure, it's intense. So, how do you stay comfortable? How do you keep yourself calm? Or does it come with practice? How do you do that?
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think that you want to set yourself up for success, right? So that starts at home. It goes back to that conversation of pre-planning,
Yeah.
having notes, having those things in mind. So you have a catalog. I sometimes will have a little joke or something like that if I need to fill time ready.
Yeah.
A bad pun. I'm queen of bad puns. But it's about feeling confident. And I think one of the ways, as you said, there's a lot of pressure. There's
Yeah.
a lot. You're there with seasoned professionals, and you want to measure up. You want to rise to that occasion. And I would say practice, practice, practice. Start to think about how you would speak to someone that you just met and that you want to teach. And so you're going to speak as clearly as possible. You are going to use terms that are easily understandable to, say, a novice chef. You always want to really remember that the people who are watching you, you can't assume that they know exactly what you're doing. So teach. That, for me, that's really where I come from, is a place of teaching and also hosting. Again, it's that dinner party idea. Someone will come to my table and I will do everything I can to make them feel welcome. Same thing on the set. I will do everything possible to make my TV guest feel as warm and welcomed as possible. I would say practice in front of the mirror. That way you can sort of see how your hands, you can see, I tend to talk a lot with my hands, so I have to calm that down when I'm on set.
Yeah.
And your mannerisms, dress for success. For me, it means a blazer.
Yeah.
Feel good about yourself. Have, your hair done or your makeup is ready.
Yeah.
Feel good about yourself. Feel confident about yourself. And always remember, if you have sort of a silence, you're cooking, you have something to do. So if you run out of things to say, oh yes, and this is how I chop onions. There's always something that you can fill in, but it's about practice and being comfortable. Take a deep breath and dive in, because
Yeah.
it's over in 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's done before you know. But
Exactly.
wow. So you do your own hair, makeup, and styling. Is that pre-decided as well? What to wear, what colors, all of that?
Question. It depends. If I'm doing a brand sponsored segment, sometimes they'll ask me to wear certain colors to sort of represent their brand colors. But no, I dress, I style myself. I'll have studio ready makeup, which tends to be heavy streetwear. And then you want to remember that studio lights, just like theater lights, they tend to wash you out. So you want to research how to contour, how to warm up your appearance, how to make your eyes look larger.
Ooh.
Also, because it helps to show, if you're very animated like I am, it really does help to have those features stand out. You want to dress professionally. So this could be business casual to full business. And you want to watch out, as particularly for ladies. Men, they tend to get away a little bit better with their clothing, but ladies' clothing, sometimes it can be sheer under certain lights. So you want to check on that. You want to
Yeah.
stay away from certain colors like green, because occasionally you're working in front of a green screen and suddenly you're part of the weather map. Um, bright patterns you want to stay away from. But, you want to look put together, cool and calm as a cucumber.
Oh gosh, yet another thing to think about. Ha!
It's
All
fun.
right. It's fun. Yeah, why not? And has there ever been a time where you've had another chef and the two of you are on the set cooking together? Has that ever happened?
Yes. You can
Oh,
tell by my
man.
voice. And sometimes it can be very positive. It's fun. You'll go back and forth. You help each other out. And I love that. I love that. But there have
Okay.
been times when I've been the second segment and the previous food content creator didn't tidy up. So in that rush to turn the studio over, it's a live show. You have limited time.
Yeah.
I had to clean up their
Oh,
mess
man.
and also set mine up. So that's tricky. And that goes to another question to ask the producers before you come in. Ask them, how early can you come into the kitchen? Is
Ah,
there going to be another kitchen area shot? Do you need to worry about timing? Because it can get tricky. And, this was really no one's fault. It was just a
right.
back-to-back food shoot. I have tag teamed before, and it can be so fun. You have to watch out that you don't end up in a pile of giggles
Yeah,
live on
yeah.
TV, because it is so fun. But yeah, pre-planning and watch out. Just be polite, be kind, be respectful, and you can handle any situation with those key points.
Yeah. I just love how you said, yes, sometimes it's fun. Sometimes. Okay, got
Oh,
the
I
hint.
betrayed myself.
So this was like a superb conversation about what happens when you're on the set and you are present in person in front of the camera. But I've seen your videos. I've seen shows where you are dialing in, you're tuning in, you're on a Zoom call or whatever. So you are in another location, then there are hosts who are in another location, and you're still hosting it together. So we'll talk just a little bit about that in that situation. How do things work? So first question is that obviously your recipes and everything, they kind of have a similar criteria, right? How you decide what to make. But then do you have any special gear that you need for this? Any special lights, mic, cameras? Tell us about that.
So really interesting question. It depends on what we're doing. So for a Zoom, I tend to have two standing LED lights. These are the same lights that I would use for my still photography if I need to boost the light source. And what I'll do is I'll put them in front of me behind the camera just so that it livens it up, because you can get some pretty tricky shadows in a home setting. I will also turn off any overhead lights because of the yellow cast. It's very
Right.
important, just as in still photography, you can get unintended color
Mm-hmm.
fluctuations and glare. I tend to just use my earpods for Zooms and an iPad on a stand. And so
Right.
I tend to raise the stand up so it's looking down a bit at me, which is more
Mm,
flattering to my
yes.
face shape, I will be honest, but
Yes.
also so that they can see what hands are doing. Occasionally, I've done a double camera setup where I will have that iPad up high and then I'll have a laptop also zooming in, tilted slightly
Hmm.
lower so that you get an up close and personal view of my hands. And this
Oh,
is something to
wow.
bring up to the studio if they need that or not. Sometimes I'll even do a pre-tape on my great, DSLR. I'll tape that portion and send it to the studio ahead of time already produced so that they can interject it in between, because with Zoom you do lose a bit of that detail, but you can compensate either by pre-recording a little bit or sending your still photography. Those process
Mm,
shots are invaluable in this
right.
process,
Oh,
and it
wow.
also helps to send those shots so that they can see the finished product, because again, showing the finished product on camera through a Zoom is great, always do that, but you miss some of the nuance. So send those stills over. I'm trying to think other things that I use, particularly when I am creating a pre-produced video, which is something that I would show on my platforms or through a
Mm-hmm.
streaming channel. I will have a lapel mic Very, very important to have a high quality lapel mic, super affordable. You can find them on Amazon. I also have, for panning shots with my
Yeah.
DSLR, a little dolly so it can move very slowly around. So it gets that real smoothness.
Yeah.
I also have a handheld, you attach your camera to it and it moves the camera independently. So it's very smooth. The name of it
Yeah.
is escaping me right now because I need
Yes.
more coffee. Um, but it is wonderful. And all of these pieces are very affordable. They're simple. They don't take up a lot of space in your home or your studio, and they can do multiple jobs. So if
Mm.
I were to advise someone who is just getting started, I would say invest in a light stand, invest in a lapel mic, and make sure that you have a really up-to-date computer or iPad to do your filming if you're doing Zoom.
Mm. I love the idea of the two camera setup for Zoom, an iPad and a laptop, because when we're recording at home, we can have two cameras. But how do you do that when you're online? I love that tip. Amazing. So tell us, when you are preparing the food, it must be a lot less stressful, right? When you're at home, you're like, okay, but do you still have 3 minutes? Does it still work like that?
Yes. Yeah, even more so because they can just cut you off.
Oh, no, no.
So and it takes some time, and you have to realize also with a Zoom there is that delay. So understanding that you will in the end probably lose 5 to 10 seconds,
Yeah.
in between there.
Yeah, true.
But yes, I've had literally make a cake in 2.5 minutes and
No.
via Zoom. Yes. So that pretty much means me throwing items into a mixer and saying, do this, pour it into this, and ta-da, here's your cake. But you learn how to do it. It is easier in a sense to do it at home because again, you have all your utensils, you've prepped, you can just reach for it. But at the same time, you may not have those signals. It's much harder to read. You're not getting those co-host
Mm.
signals.
Mm.
And I'll be honest, back in December, I was doing a holiday sort of content and I didn't finish. I just didn't finish. And it was, it made me personally upset, but thank goodness I had the finished product ready. I had those still shots so that they could edit and put it in. And you learn. You don't take it personally. You just, learn from it and keep moving forward.
And you didn't finish because they.
The timing, no, I didn't have
Oh, the
any cues.
cues. Oh
And they also
gosh.
cut me. They they chopped off a minute without telling
Oh,
me. I was like,
which
oh,
which is half
that
the
would be
show.
important. Which is half the show, but that's where that conversation comes in. That was on me. I
Yeah.
didn't double check. I just assumed that we had our 3 minutes.
Oh man. So have there been any other bloopers or situations where you're like, oh, okay, that didn't go well, or I should have done that? Were there any such situations?
Always. And I'm very, again, type A. I like to go back and look at what I've done and try to improve. And yes, there have been bloopers. There has been co-host bloopers. There have been times where, again, like where I forgot a product and that was pretty essential to the recipe or a garnish element, and then you just go with it. You're like, oh, no cream, no whipped cream. Oh well, you just kind of tap danced. And there was a time when a co-host, we were making a cocktail, and we were using, I think it was brandy, and it was great. I love this co-host. We're working, and they were a little bit younger than
Yeah.
I was, and suddenly we're on camera, and he starts pretty much calling me old for
Oh.
liking for liking this. And me being me, I have a lovely one-liner going. So we've had things like that. You just take it and you move because it's funny.
Yeah.
Flour exploding on set when you turn the mixer on too quickly. That has happened. You just play it off, brush it off your shoulders. I've had things where I've dribbled sauces on my shirt. You're like, this
Yeah.
is cooking. This is real life. Just like Julia Child. She's my idol.
Yeah.
She didn't let anything faze her. Things would fall on the floor, things wouldn't come out. You just roll with it because this is real life. And not only will your production team appreciate you, your audience will so connect with that facet
Yeah.
of you.
I couldn't agree more. It's so natural. You're suddenly like, oh, yeah, that's happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
So amazing. But so, Jessie, for most of us, it's like, being on TV is like the ultimate. It's the top of the pyramid kind of a thing. So you're there already. where are you headed, or where do you think that your learning, your ambitions, or your future is looking for you in food content creation?
Oh goodness, you're so kind. I am a forever learner. I'm also one that wants to keep going to see how high I can take this. Ultimately, I would like my own show, and I've had a taste
Wow.
of that through a streaming channel, which was lovely, and I hope to continue to pursue that on a cable channel or a network channel and continue to audition. But yes, a show and a cookbook. I want to continue to teach and host because I think this is an element in our culture that we need to touch in on. We have a whole generation that is not comfortable necessarily in the kitchen. And I think that's a shame. And to realize that cooking and cooking from scratch with real ingredients and with finesse and enjoyment
Yeah.
is crucial. So my goal is to do that through TV, to do that through a cookbook, to continue using the Food Blog School to help educate not only other food content producers, but also the general public, and of course through the blog.
Amazing. Oh my God. That would be like, wow. Okay. So that's the top of the pyramid. Okay. I changed my plan.
Always with the goals.
Yeah. But tell me one thing. Have you ever had any, because right now you are on other shows, it's not your own show, or you are working with a food product brand. Have you ever had any issues with using the footage or the kind of license or terms of use? Like, does it get complicated when you're just being hired for a particular segment? So tell us a little bit about how the license works when you're on TV.
Right. That's a very important question. And I think, this again is a conversation to have in particular with the director of the station as well as the producer of the show. So in the past, most of my segments, I have been allowed to feature them in snippets on my website. Now, if I were to use them on a YouTube or to create a reel of my work, I would have to buy those segments. And it's a small fee. And it's very important, though, that you choose the best quality segments, one where you shine to feature on your platforms, but also the best quality in the sense of production. Every studio is different in the sense of their equipment, of the talent of the studio itself, if it's, pleasant to look at. So you want to keep those factors in mind. But oftentimes you should converse with that producer before ever putting anything like that on your site, and then definitely seek and look into buying those segments to feature on other sort of platforms. But in the end, I've never had issue with it. But it's again going back to that being respectful, playing by the book.
And when you do reach out to other producers or you're pitching, are you allowed to send out those segments that you've purchased as a portfolio?
That's a really great question. I tend to be on the safe side. I will say in my pitch, this is who I am. This is what I do. I've appeared on such and such channels here, here, and here. And I add the links from the station channel to it, just so that I stay within that green zone, because I don't want to misstep. But yeah, that's a great way of pitching yourself, because you can show them your work. You can show them how you handle situations. I tend to send them, ones that are quite polished, but I'll send them a funny one. I'll send them a blooper reel, which, in the end turned out really well, but they can see what you can do. And if you want to really create something that's polished and of your own, definitely invest the time in creating a pre-produced segment of your own. Or you can also rent out studios, and you can rent out camera equipment and hire operators. This is another facet that I know that other creators use as well. So there's a lot of different ways to create that content, in particular to have it as a resume of sorts.
Right. Oh, wow. That's interesting. So tell me a little bit more about, like, for somebody who wants to get into TV, is there like a pre-qualification, or are there certain qualities? Like you said, this is one thing that someone can do just to show their camera presence or their spontaneity or their way of delivering dialogues or whatever it takes. That's one way people can showcase. But other than that, are there qualities, or are there things that producers particularly look for? Charisma? I don't know. What do you need? What do you need?
Charisma is definitely part of it. And you, my friend, have loads of it. I can't wait to see you on TV. I think that having that, we call it stage presence in the art world. It's having that comfort level, that ability to relate to someone, and that you're animated, you show emotion, you show pleasure, you're able
Mm,
to work quickly, that you're a conversationalist,
mm,
that you're knowledgeable. My biggest item that I tend to really encourage content producers to remember is that you truly need to be a specialist in your field for what you're presenting, because that is half the battle. If you go on and you're on set and you don't have confidence in what you're producing,
true.
it will come across. But also, a lot of it is that interpersonal skill. It's that ability to talk, to have fun, to giggle, and to really play on camera. And I think that's something that's really important. And it can be a learned skill. Practice. You can, my children laugh at me, but sometimes I'll talk to myself in the car as
Yeah.
I, drive them to school before a segment. I'm
Yeah.
practicing where I'm going to inflect, where I'm going to emphasize, and always keep that flow going.
Wow. So number one would definitely be skillful and knowledgeable about your subject, and two is confidence, and three is practice. Yeah.
And being playful, being
Being
that,
playful.
again, feel like you're the host. You're the hostess with the mostest.
Oh, wow. Oh, gosh. This was so fun, Jessie. I have one last question, which is kind of tied to our last question, but you've seen so much of the big screen life that if you had to give somebody an advice, what would be your number one advice to somebody who aspires to create content for TV someday?
Start creating video now. Start creating, invest either in a good camera or in a great camera phone.
Hmm.
Start figuring out how you want your work to look. So that could be stylistic. I started creating video for Instagram, actually, just with my handheld phone. And it wasn't super polished, but you start to figure out how you decide what the important bits of the recipe are to show the audience. So that could be, the folding of the egg whites for a flourless chocolate cake, or, the water bath for a cheesecake. You're going to learn by practicing. And if you start to create those videos for yourself, you will have such a collection of food content to pull from that you can create either for Instagram or for a reel for a producer or for YouTube. But you want to really start to get comfortable in front of that camera, behind that camera, but also in the process of setting up the shoot, because
Mm.
that is really half the battle, is just knowing what needs to be shown, what can be edited. You don't need to, see yourself peeling an orange. No one
Right.
needs to see that. But the important bits, and just realizing your style, your technique, and your personality on camera, because it can be a little bit different. So as I present myself here on the podcast, I am rather giggly. And on TV, I can be rather giggly and
Right.
funny, but it's a little bit more of a polished version of myself. So yeah, practice your camera work, what you want to create for that video, and also your on-screen sort of personality. It has to be authentic. It has to be part of you, but get to a place where you're comfortable with that image.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. I'm on it. Wow, but that's such a great, you've broken it down so well for somebody to, kind of, you need to know how to be behind the camera and in front of the camera, but
Mhm.
also remember your 3 minute timing and then how you would segment. I'm
Yes.
sorry, it's just stuck with me.
No, 3 minutes. 3 minutes can be as long or as short as you make it.
True, absolutely. Amazing. This was amazing, Jessie. TV was such a mystical world, and it is for many of us who have not had that exposure. We've been on a very different side, a very different kind of a camera. So you've just demystified it. You've given us so much information, and you've been so open and honest about all of it. So thank you so much for sharing all this so generously with us. It was amazing. Thank you for making us look so glamorous. Really. Before you go, can you just once again tell our audience all about your fantastic blog, your social media handles, and definitely about the Food Blog School?
Oh, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you, and it's honestly been an honor to appear here. And you are tremendous, such a talent, both behind the camera, in front of the camera, which is drumming, and through the podcast. But yes, so my name is Jessie Sierra Ross, and you can find my work at straight2thehipsbaby.com, or you can find my work on social media platforms at Straight to the Hips Baby. I also run a terrific clubhouse community full of food creators, mixologists, chefs, food photographers, influencers, and everything in between called the Food Blog School. And that meets every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we discuss everything food related, food content related, and definitely have a lot of giggles. And as always, with my TV work, you can find me on NBC all over New England.
Fantastic. I'm tuning into NBC next. There you go. Thank you, Jessie. Thank you for making the time. Thank you so much for sharing so much with us. It was such a pleasure having you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, guys, that was Jessie, and wasn't she just incredible? I told you she's a rock star. She's not just a TV personality, she's a rock star. Did you see how she shared all that information with us so generously, so openly? And there were so many takeaways from what she told us. So, we all live in a kind of a different parallel world of commercial food photography, maybe editorial food photography. But food styling and content creation for TV, for the big screen, is a whole different ball game. Now, that is something else, right? Oh, wow. I'm just pumped after having this conversation with her. I'm like, wow. Sometimes we don't think of possibilities. And I think this conversation with Jessie is like, there is another world out there. There is so much to explore. There are so many opportunities, right? So if this is a thought that has been in your mind, something that you have contemplated, then you know exactly how to go about it because Jessie told us how to, right? Wow, wow, wow. It's so late on a Sunday night for me right now, but you should see the kind of energy she's left me with. I just loved this conversation, everything from licensing to producers to what's on the set and how do you prepare and confidence and dialogue delivery and makeup. Wow, what a power packed conversation. Did you love it or not? Did I ask you that already? Well, if you did, please rate, review, and subscribe on whichever platform you're listening. If you have a question, please send it to Jessie or myself. Jessie is extremely approachable. She's one of the most sweetest, grounded, genuine people, and she would totally be out there to help you with any questions that you have. You're also welcome to send them to me on hello@myfoodlens or send me a message on Instagram at Dyutama_myfoodlens. All right, with that, I'll see you next week with another episode. Until then, bye-bye.